Look, the war is going to end. When it ends, I can't tell you, but the war is going to end, and this gentleman wants it to end, and Vladimir Putin wants it to end. I think the whole world is tired of it.
US President Donald Trump hosted Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House. The meeting was very different from Zelensky's last visit to Washington in February. Back then, he was publicly scolded by Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance for not being grateful enough. That meeting ended abruptly and raised fears in Kyiv about losing US support.
American media, when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
This time, things looked different.
World leaders gathered here today.
Trump greeted Zelenskyy with respect, and Zelenskyy repeatedly expressed his thanks at least 8 times during his remarks. Instead of criticism, he earned praise.
Thank you so much. I think that we had very good conversation with President Trump.
Very good.
And it really was the best one. Maybe the best one will be in the future. But it was really good.
But what exactly did Trump and Zelenskyy discuss? And could this open the door to ending the Russia-Ukraine war? Hello and welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Unman Bhattacharya. Let's connect the dots. Zelenskyy was not alone in Washington. He was joined by top European leaders including UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and others. So what were European leaders doing there? They came to Washington to show solidarity with Ukraine and to press Trump for strong guarantees that any peace deal would protect Ukraine. So what came out of this high-stakes meeting? There were 2 main outcomes. First, security guarantees. Trump ruled out Ukraine's NATO membership. Instead, he suggested NATO-like guarantees which could involve US commitments or a European-led defense framework.
We had 2 material outcomes. The first, on the question of security guarantees, was the agreement that the coalition of willing countries, that's 30 countries already working together on security guarantees, will now work with the US on those guarantees, coordinating.
Second, plans for a trilateral summit. Trump announced that he had called Russian President Vladimir Putin to begin arranging a 3-way meeting with Zelenskyy and himself. The summit could take place in Hungary within weeks.
The other material outcome was the agreement that will now be a bilateral agreement between President Putin and President Zelenskyy. That was after a phone call between President Trump and President Putin during the course of this afternoon, followed by a trilateral, which will then add in President Trump. And that is a recognition of the principle that on some of these issues, whether it's territory or the exchange of prisoners, or the very serious issue of the return of the children, that is something where Ukraine must be at the table.
But behind all these negotiations lies one central issue, a demand from Moscow. Reports suggest that during the Trump-Putin talks in Alaska, Putin said he might agree to freeze much of the front line. In return, however, Ukraine would have to hand over the entire Donetsk region. Zelenskyy immediately rejected the idea. So let's understand what is at stake in Donetsk. The Donetsk region, together with neighboring Luhansk, makes up the Donbas in eastern Ukraine. Now, this area has been at the center of the conflict for more than a decade. Russia currently controls around 19% of Ukraine. That includes almost all of Luhansk and about 3/4 of Donetsk. Ukraine still holds about 30% of Donetsk, including key cities, and these areas remain fiercely contested. So why does Donetsk matter so much to Russia? For Moscow, there are 3 main reasons, the first being history and influence. Russia points to its cultural and linguistic ties with many residents, highlighting the large Russian-speaking population. Second is strategic depth. Holding Donetsk secures a land bridge to Crimea and strengthens Russia's grip over southern Ukraine. And third, the economy. The Donbas is rich in coal, steel and heavy industry. These resources help sustain Russia's war effort. Since 2014, Moscow has invested heavily in integrating the occupied areas, making it unlikely to give them up. Now, why does Donetsk matter to Ukraine? For Ukraine, Donetsk is equally important. First reason being defense. Cities like Sloviansk and Kramatorsk form what many call a fortress belt. Now, these positions have stopped Russian advances for more than a decade. Losing them would expose central Ukraine to deeper attacks. Second is energy and industry. The Donbas region powers a large part of Ukraine's economy. It provides resources that are critical not only for fighting the war, but also for rebuilding afterward. This is why Zelenskyy has said again and again that Ukraine will not trade land for peace, no matter how difficult the war becomes. Let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Russia currently occupies about 19% of Ukraine, including Crimea, nearly all of Luhansk and most of Donetsk. Ukraine still holds key ground, but has lost territory in recent months. Both sides have suffered massive casualties. After more than 3 years, this remains Europe's deadliest war in 80 years. The Washington meeting signals a possible new phase. Talks are now focusing not just on stopping the fighting, but also on deciding the future of contested regions like Donetsk. Yet, the gap remains wide. Ukraine refuses to cede territory. Russia refuses to retreat. For now, peace is still out of reach.
Nature's fury in northern India, sweeping off everything coming in its way. This is Dharali village in Uttarakhand. 2,700 meters above sea level in the Himalayas. In the aftermath of this tragedy, the village has become unrecognizable. Half of it stands buried. Look how much it has changed. What you see on the left is Dharali before the disaster. On the right is Dharali after the disaster. So what happened? A deluge of rain led to a landslide. And the Kyiv stream, which flows through the village, swelled up with debris. Within seconds, the floodwaters swallowed the multi-story hotels and homestays offering river views. An internal preliminary report submitted to the Ministry of Home Affairs details how it all happened. It says a landslide-induced lake outburst triggered a chain reaction among several small lakes, resulting in a massive flash flood.
After the disaster struck Dharali village, it was reported that a massive cloudburst caused flash floods. But the Uttarakhand state government did not confirm whether the floods were caused by a cloudburst, a glacial lake outburst floods, or a combination of factors including heavy rainfall and landslides. According to IMD data, there is no evidence of a cloudburst as per its definition, which requires 100 millimeters or more rainfall within an hour over a 10 square kilometers area. Nevertheless, the aftermath of the tragedy is quite overwhelming. A blanket of sludge piled as high as 30 to 40 meters now covers the village, which had a population of less than 1,000 and also a high floating population of tourists.
The rumbling noises of earth movers and the thud of spades striking the ground reverberate through the air. There is only devastation as far as the eye can see. While rescuers and dog squads continue to search for the missing, only one body has been recovered. At least 69 people remain missing, including 9 army personnel and 25 Nepali workers. Rescue teams have airlifted around 1,400 people by chopper from the flood-hit site. The Uttarakhand government says around 150 hotels and homestays, several other establishments and apple orchards have been destroyed. Locals blame the tragedy on unchecked urbanization and rampant deforestation.
तो जब हमारे प्रकृति के साथ में पर्वतों पे छेड़खानियाँ होगी
The natural disasters are bound to happen when nature in this area and our hills are disturbed, tampered with. The forests are cut down, and now we have no jungles left. Earlier, the streams, rainwater runoffs used to flow, but now they are all blocked and jammed, and the water keeps accumulating in one place. And if all the water is concentrated, it will eventually burst out. So, the floods and cloudbursts are a result of disturbing the nature in Garhwal region.
के साथ में यहाँ गढ़वाल में ज़्यादा छेड़खानियाँ हो रही है
पहले ये होता था कि ऐसी जगह में लोग मकान बनाते थे
Earlier, people used to build their houses in safer locations, but now the houses are constructed next to where the streams fall, at the mouth of the streams. So obviously, they suffer in terms of lives and property when disasters strike, and then they complain, saying, "We are facing the fury of nature."
फिर बोलेगी कि मेरे साथ बड़ा प्रकृति का वो हो गया
While floods and landslides are common during the monsoon season from June to September, experts say climate change coupled with poorly planned development is increasing their frequency and severity. The United Nations World Meteorological Organization said last year that increasingly intense floods and droughts are a distress signal of what is to come, as climate change makes the planet's water cycle ever more unpredictable.
We are living in a period of climate change. Temperatures are rising, snow which did not melt earlier is melting, and there is heavy rainfall on top of it. So the combination of melting snows, ice, water, and lots of debris, this is what becomes a killer.
Environmental experts also call for a relook at how development is taking place in the Himalayan region.
In this area, if you want to do any kind of major infrastructural development project, you have to be extremely sensitive to the geology. But we've had a road program, we've had a number of dams being built here, we had massive expansion of tourism and therefore urbanization, and now we have a railway going through these mountains. Now all of these, as I have said earlier, require very careful planning, but neither the money is sanctioned nor is the time allotted for careful work.
Uttarakhand is not alone. Back-to-back natural disasters have hit Jammu and Kashmir in northern India too.
This is Kishtwar district of J&K. On 14th August, torrential rain triggered a flash flood at Chasoti village here. It is the last motorable village on the way to Machel Mata temple. At least 65 people died in the tragedy. 3 days after the flash flood in Kishtwar, cloudbursts hit 2 villages in Kathua district of J&K. Locals were taken aback by the scale of the disaster.
It's the first time an incident like this has happened. Before some water used to enter, we knew that water will enter, so there was nothing to worry about because we lived here since our childhood. Suddenly around 11 to 11:30 p.m, water kept rising and it felt like a cloudburst had occurred.
Rescuers searched for survivors under boulders and debris. Victims in need of medical attention were airlifted from the area.
In Kathua, it was raining heavily since the previous night, which led to a landslide in Juthana, Jakhol and Bhagwal area. Because of the landslide, 7 people died. Rescue operations are underway and the Army, State Disaster Response Force, National Disaster Response Force, Civil Administration and Police are collectively carrying out the rescue operation. Victims are being rescued. Some have been rescued on helicopters as accessibility to those areas has been cut off. But the situation is stable. Those who were unfortunate to have lost their lives in the landslide have been pulled out.
A study published in Mausam, a quarterly journal of the India Meteorological Department, has found that from 2010 to 2022, J&K saw over 2,800 extreme weather events. More than 550 people died in them. In this period, The largest number of deaths due to flash floods occurred in Kishtwar, Anantnag, Ganderbal and Doda.
Although there are several factors that contribute to the occurrence of extreme weather events in Jammu and Kashmir, there are some significant drivers of these events. One of them, like in the case of Uttarakhand, is rising temperatures.
Jammu and Kashmir is located in the western Himalayas. It is a region that has experienced a twofold increase in temperatures compared to the Indian subcontinent as a whole since 2000.
For every 1 degree Celsius rise in average temperature, the atmosphere can hold about 7% more moisture. This means more, longer and frequent precipitation intensity, and this ultimately causes severe flooding.
Also, higher temperatures shrink glaciers in the region. More glacial lakes are formed as a result. Their water, when released, can cause major flooding in downstream areas. Another driver of these events is the changing nature of Western disturbances. Experts suggest that J&K could be witnessing more flash floods and rain due to global warming-induced changes in the nature of Western disturbances. While Western disturbances are most common in the December to March period, they have now begun to impact weather outside the winter season too. So the risk of floods and heavy rain has increased in India's Himalayan states.
Experts explain that global warming has led to rapid warming of the Arabian Sea, which then emits more moisture northwards. This too has led to intense weather activity over the hills.
Jammu and Kashmir's topography also makes it more vulnerable to extreme weather events. That's because topographically, the Himalayas comprise a series of diverse hill ranges. They have a profound effect on weather patterns. One major factor is orographic rainfall, when moist air is forced to rise over the mountains, cooling and condensing into heavy precipitation. So North India has faced a series of catastrophic flash floods and natural disasters throughout 2025, but other parts of the world are also increasingly facing freak weather events.
Global rise in temperatures, changes in weather patterns and unplanned development are increasingly making especially the ecologically sensitive areas more vulnerable with time. They are also leading to unprecedented damages and losses elsewhere. The June 2013 Kedarnath disaster was caused by unprecedented rains and a glacial lake outburst at Chorabari Lake. Many also saw it as a man-made disaster. It had led to a staggering 6,000 deaths. The question remains, a decade since the Himalayan disaster, have the right lessons been learnt? That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you in the next episode with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Munmun Bhattacharya signing off. Take care and stay safe.